Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
All right, everybody, welcome to episode 16 of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Dan was at the helm this past week in our business. I was away at a conference, which is always
gallivanting around.
I know. Yeah, right. I mean, the nice thing about these entrepreneurial sort of groups that we're in is, you know, they're completely voluntary. The people are in, and they're not exactly cheap. I mean, we pay $10,000 a year to be in this GoBundance group. So they always have their events in like cool spots, you know. So it's like a destination. So you got something to do. You know, they're not gonna have it in some crappy area where you go and everyone's bored. So they
stuck in a hotel the whole time while you're at conference room after conference room.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, the last thing you want is something like that. Everyone comes up and they're bored, or like even worse, all they do is just get hammered because they have nothing else to do.
Right.
You've taken over this hotel and you set a really bad precedence for, you know, your group in that area.
Well, and I think with GoBundance too, what I like about it is they're very intentional about the activity, like that part of the adventure part of your life.
Yeah.
Like, so if we're going to do something, it's going to be adventurous and we're going to get a ton of value out of it. And you don't need to spend 40 hours of a week in a conference room listening to, you know, people talk. It's like super intentional about everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's one of their core values. They said all 6 or 7 of them at the beginning. I forget what they were.
6,
but, is it 6? Yeah. I mean, you already know. You read the book. Right. But yeah, they have this one in Park City, Utah. It was a good time. You know, brought my wife. We went skiing for a few days while we were there, a few half days. A lot of the conference stuff was kind of in the evenings, and then they would have different activities, like sort of community building activities during the day. So I played broomball one day with a bunch of guys, which was pretty fun.
Broing down,
little competitive athletics, and to sweeten the pot, one of the founders was there and I think was worried he wasn't going to be competitive enough, so he made everyone put up $100 to play. So we ended up having it's like a $3,500 pot. So with the team size, like the winning team, each person got like $600 or something.
I wonder if he said 1,000, if dudes would have still been broing down, or if it would have gotten too crazy. Like maybe there's like a fine balance. Yeah, because $1,000, $35,000 in the pot, like dudes are gonna start getting physical.
I know they're already getting physical for $100 each person, right? But no, I think that was like the good size for the net worth and the income level of people there. That they didn't care if they got stuck on like the crappy team, because it was like whatever, we're just having fun. But at the same time, like, if you could smell that you had a chance to win, people were getting after it, So, it was a good conference overall, though. And it really sort of reinforced my view on the importance of, making sure that you're not the smartest person in the room. Sure. When because especially for us living in a small town, I guess smaller. It's not like we live in Seattle or San Francisco where
it's quite small-minded, though.
It's small-minded for sure, but a lot of bigger cities, if you want to go and be around A players, you just go to a meetup, or you can even just talk to people and you'll find other individuals that are doing work and doing well for themselves. But in Spokane, that population's pretty small. And one of the challenges as well is I think the population is small enough that when you do find them, they tend to be competitors in whatever you're doing. Right. So you can't exactly share that much and talk that much deep in your business, right?
Exactly.
But going to this, the net worth of people and the size of their business and their income levels varied so incredibly much, from people that are a few million to people that are, 9 figures.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
And one of the most fascinating things, though, was that at the end of the day, everyone kind of has like similar issues and similar values and similar desires. And you sort of realize pretty quick that, regardless of scale, I don't know, everyone's kind of the same, and it's an even playing field. At the end of the day.
I mean, the old adage, everybody puts their pants on the same way, right?
Exactly, right?
And you do get around enough guys, it's like some of the people in the group, it's like they're clearly accelerating in life in certain areas. Doesn't mean they haven't had to deal with the same problems you're dealing with, or currently are dealing with them, or dealing with a problem you can solve.
Exactly.
And vice versa, which is cool about it. And that's, as we've known, is what's helped our business grow, is just the value of networking and the value of people.
Yeah, and that's why we're in, several mastermind groups. We're in GoBundance. We're in our original mastermind group that we started with. It's funny, even like people that we work with now, that pay us to sort of learn our stuff. I mean, we learn things from everyone, even like newer people, right?
Yep.
Because they run into problems that sort of make you think about how to structure it better in your business. Because as we sort of realize, when you have stuff in your business and you're trying to teach somebody else, you almost undercover holes.
Right.
In your business, because you're like, oh, I guess I could do that better because I can't explain to you how to do it. But
best way to learn something is to teach it.
Exactly. But I think one of the biggest takeaways, was the value of paying in your education, and making sure that you're around like-minded people, even if that does cost you money, because the amount that you'll get back from that is going to greatly exceed the barrier to the cost to entry.
Yep. I mean, it's just like this simple mindset that you grow up with. Your parents tell you these sorts of things too. It's like you can't. I don't know. I'm not going to say you can't, because nothing's impossible, but it's less likely you're going to be what you want to be if you're not associating with those people.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
at some level.
100%. And I'm not sure where it initially came from, this thought, but I've heard it on Tim Ferriss a few times, where they say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that that's so true, even if it's like not necessarily people that are in your immediate circle that you see every day, but people that you connect with, you associate with on a regular basis.
Yep.
If you can go to some of these groups, these conferences, things like that, and you find a couple guys that you really mesh with that are doing what you want to do, and you make it an intentional practice to reach out to them and connect with them on a regular basis, you can guarantee you're going to elevate to their level.
Absolutely. It's it happened for us fast, like here locally in our market, and just the people that we kind of aspire to be. And then you look back like 18 months to 24 months, and you're like, oh crap, we surpassed them. And now you need a new group of people.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because it can happen fast. And if you're not paying attention to it, all of a sudden you are the smartest guy in the room, and you're not able to continue to scale in whatever avenue of life you want to scale in.
Yeah, you're completely right. But yeah, so that was one of the big things. And then I think the other thing that it really sort of confirmed is how honestly easy it is to grow and be successful if you are very deliberate about planning your next steps, and you're very intentional about making sure that you actually follow through.
Sure.
Yep. Because so many people there, and we kind of found this a little bit, they kind of scrounged up their businesses from nothing. I don't say we didn't necessarily come from nothing. We had some resources to start because we had engineering degrees and we had previous decent salaries. But the businesses, it wasn't like they got handed businesses, or we got handed a business that's functioning. Mm-hmm. We took our licks, we learned, we went through the difficulties of trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And for the last couple of years, we've monitored what's working, we've changed things around that aren't working, we've pivoted, we've moved, and we've evolved. And hence that's where we are now. And that was the one thing that everyone there had in common, was they've gone through the same steps, right? And then even the people that are worth $100 million are at that group and are starting new businesses, they're still doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. If they want to start a new business, it's like, okay, well, what's not working? What is? How can we pivot that? How can we evolve that? And with that extra capital, I think it increases this velocity at which you can get that to be successful.
Sure.
But the process and the struggles are all still exactly the same. But
yeah, and I think there's some sort of I don't know the best way to say it, but failure is not an option. Really isn't that's not kind of the quote, because failure is an option, right? And if you fail, it's who cares? But it's that mindset that failure is an option, I think, is okay, because you're going to take what you learned and you're going to pivot however you need to within our business. I think back, for us, there's definitely been challenging times where you're like, man, what's going on in the business right now, but like at no point in time was it like, oh, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And if this right in front of us doesn't work, that's okay, because the next step is going to be in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's that mindset shift of, this won't work to how do we make this work?
Right.
Sure. And that's a big one. It's just an important mindset shift that people have to learn to make. But overall it was good. Very productive week. We got a lot of people to follow up this week, ranging from the real estate business to people to help make the podcast better, to people to help us build out some of the educational stuff that we're working on, that we're going to be releasing to everyone that listens. There's some tax guys that we got to connect with. They're going to help us out there. People that are doing all sorts of things. There's a guy that has some new AI technology for marketing that we're going to be potentially doing some stuff with, which will be really interesting. I mean, access to those people alone from all over the country is more than worth it.
It's so worth it, yeah.
So.
I definitely have some FOMO of not going. I should have pulled the trigger on going, but life got in front of me, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's all right. Got a kid, expecting wife. It's a little harder for you to. Plus, your family isn't like a ski family.
Yeah.
For me and my wife to just go, it was like a event. Anyway.
Like a normal, yeah.
Yeah, because we got to go to like a fun ski town, and then my wife worked remotely from there, and she's pretty introverted, so she's happy just kind of doing her own thing too. So it made it pretty easy.
I mean, I'm glad the ski conditions weren't the best like that.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
A little bit less FOMO with that.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
Yeah, cool. It was a good time though. So I think more of the story. Don't be afraid to pay to play, especially when it comes to education and networking. So, So you manned the ship while I was gone, and it was a little rocky.
It was definitely a weird week for us. And, as you and I chatted earlier today, I think we're kind of uncovering some stuff we can chat about here in a little bit, which honestly is kind of fascinating. But I'll before I digress too far, it was weird because obviously we're working our normal leads, but it felt like none of the mail was hitting.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get a lot of new leads. We got, cold call leads, and it's, all the leads we're getting is kind of in that, like, oh, we want to sell in the spring. So they're getting ready. It's winter time, like as we see. And as you and I know, it's like we've got to get better at still closing those and moving forward as a business with those types of leads. But that was definitely, this is the first time you went out of town that it was a slow week on acquisitions. Usually it's like madhouse, and I'm just trying to keep up with everything, including the acquisitions. And so, still a successful week. We're still getting appointments scheduled. Had a lot of cancellations with appointments too, which was kind of silly. But, as I talked to people, like just in general, like everybody last week had COVID that I talked to.
Yeah.
They all, and so like it's like it was a real problem, I think, the last couple of weeks, just from any employer standpoint or any just getting out and doing shit, just because people were hunkering down because they had it, right? I mean, my daughter's daycare has been closed a couple times in the last month because of it. Schools are shutting down again. So it's just a little bit of a challenge to work around with folks, where if people aren't feeling well or something like that, we need to pivot back to doing more virtual stuff with them, which we know is an option. Hey, can you just send us photos? Because, you and I buy houses without looking at them.
Yeah.
Right. We have somebody else look at them. Right. I'm the construction side of things, and I don't see it until it's typically signed around or closed. Mm-hmm. And so it's not hard to do for us. But anyhow, other than that, projects moving forward, getting all of our closings lined up. It was still like a busy week in some senses, but just we weren't able to run as many appointments as we would typically like in a week, although we dug a handful out to make sure we did.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's where it's important to have that virtual side of your business as well. So, at the conference I was at, there was a few other people that ran pretty large direct-to-seller outfits. Some of them were wholesale businesses, some of them were purely fix and flip businesses. But I mean, I connected with one guy who wholesales a lot of properties down in Florida, and he did like 308 deals last year.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I guess for context, we had our close was like 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
So he did was that, like 8 times more than us, more than that, almost 9 times more than us. No, wait, 8 times 3,200. Yeah. Sorry, 320. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I got it figured out. Too many zeros. And listening to his business model is he does everything virtual.
But in his home market. So we're saying virtual, we're talking about in your backyard,
Exactly, but he doesn't run appointments. He doesn't do any of that sort of stuff. He doesn't even get photos until the property's signed around.
Which is awesome.
Very, very interesting. But he's, so he said they closed 308, but he said their contract drop rate was like 47%.
Wow. So maybe 150-ish closed.
No. So they closed 308. That means they got like 600 contracts.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, math's wrong there. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So 50% of the contracts they sign, they don't close because, after they pre-screen and they had a contract signed around, then they go to verify it. At that point, they either move forward with the deal if it still makes sense, or if there's excess work that the seller didn't make them aware of, then they try to renegotiate. And that's a very different business model. And he has 20 people in-house that work for him, whereas we have 2 and a bunch of VAs, right?
Yep.
So but at the same time, he also lives in Florida, so COVID doesn't exist in Florida.
Right. They don't get slowed down by that, or the winters, or anything.
Or the winters, exactly.
Yeah. And everybody's moving to Florida right now. So.
Yeah, but also talking to another guy who was in Ohio, they kind of do a pretty virtual hybrid model, and he kind of said a similar thing though, where stuff like COVID doesn't really slow them down. And what this guy actually does is if there is a COVID situation, they need to verify the property, they go to the property with an iPad and they basically just like leave it on the doorstep. They can like come out, grab it, the people can go in and take the photos, and then they come out and cool, now they got their photos to disposition the property.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm like, that makes perfect sense, right? So it kind of gets you thinking when you hear people like that, and you hear their systems a little bit. Like, why don't we do that? But there's also an ethical component there that I struggle with a little bit. Like, I don't like to drop contracts. We've only willingly dropped 2 contracts in almost 2 years. I think only 2. Yeah, only 2. And then the other ones that we've had that have been dropped have been because of seller issues or title issues that are out of our control. And I don't know if that's maybe I'm just too much of a softie.
Well, yeah, depending on like how you're doing it, when you're doing it, I think kind of also matters. Context matters, but
for sure.
You don't ever want to give somebody hope that especially the folks we're dealing with, giving them the hope, and then a week or even 2 days before closing, cancel it because they're making arrangements. Typically, not all of our sellers are making arrangements, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of them are. And so it is kind of shitty to do that. If you're just doing it as it's just a numbers game, I'm going to drop 300 no matter what. That's kind of stinks,
It is, yeah. And I think you're right. It depends on the people when you do it. 2 days before is always shady. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But if you're able to get out there like 3 days after signing on a 30-day close time frame, and then you're like, actually, we can't do this, and that's more reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's much more appropriate. Yeah. So, because they haven't had time to make any arrangements, it's not a big deal. And if you're signing contracts the way that they're talking about signing contracts, that seems appropriate too, right? Because you might have some contingencies in there like, hey, we do need to get pictures or whatever it is. And then that can tell you right away if it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And we always have, the opportunity to get photos and do a quote-unquote inspection in the first 15 days written into our contract, so we always have an easy out if needed. But one of the situations though that we uncovered after we had such a slow week, which didn't really make sense because we dropped 4,000 mailers the Friday before I left. So with our typical KPIs, that meant we should have been getting minimum 40, potentially up to 60 phone calls from that list. Do you know how many we got, Dan?
I didn't even track it because there wasn't enough to track in my head. Like
6.
Yeah, it was so low. All the what I recognized, most of the leads coming in were our guy Ricardo. Cold calling.
So a lot of cold call leads, but for that match of mail, we got 6 instead of the expected 40 to 60. Right,
which is bad.
It's bad, and so that got me diving in a little bit, and this is where this business becomes challenging because as I there's a lot of things I was looking at, like, is our data wrong? Did stuff get messed up along the way? Did stuff even get sent out? There was a lot of things I was trying to sort of figure out, and the U.S. Postal Service isn't exactly the most reliable person.
No, they're not.
Reliable group. Yeah, right.
They're not? Who do you call?
I know. Yeah, exactly. Who do you call to figure that out? But anyway, so I started digging, so part of our process when anyone does direct mail, let's deal with this. You get a lot of letters sent back that have incorrect addresses. People have moved, people have died, things like that have happened, And so I started looking at our previous return to sender numbers, and they've been like increasing over the last, few batches that we've sent out. And our number of leads for the same kind of marketing has been slowly decreasing. This has been obviously a big drop off. And so I was like, okay, well, something's wrong with our data. I confirmed that's all fine. So I started going through and trying to figure out what exactly the issue was. And on our letters that we're getting, there's always a little note from the post office that says why something got returned. And I noticed a huge number of them that say cannot be delivered as addressed. Okay, so I'm like, okay, so there's obviously the wrong address on here. So I started spot checking a handful of them from ones we sent out in December that came back, and they're all the right fucking address. Right name, right address, spelled out exactly like is in the assessor website, but for some reason the post office is saying that they cannot deliver them, and I don't know why.
That is the golden question we got to figure out. It's like, you and I were noticing on these, they have barcodes on. There's a way that the barcodes are printed wrong. Cause like there's I'm looking at one right now on our desk. I mean, you can't get a more clear address, and we've checked this one. Like, this thing is accurate.
Yeah.
And then it's like, can you call the post office? God, no, you can't call the post office. Like, what are they going to do? Yeah. What I was thinking is, can you imagine like all the people that don't do the RTS process like we do?
You're just thinking so much down the toilet right now.
If this happens to you, or it is, or you maybe like you didn't do well with your direct mail, but you never monitor. I mean, because like we wouldn't know if at all, because we track all of our RTS, we track all of our data, and like that. I mean, we wouldn't know. We'd just be sitting here like, man, I guess mail is not working.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, there's probably a lot of people that has happened to. So we need to figure out where that situation is stemming. So there's that barcode. I'm not sure if that barcode comes from our mail house. Whichever one we're using. We've used open letter marketing, use code KEYS5 for 5% off. And we've also used ballpoint marketing, use code MD5 for 5% off.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, that adds up a lot. If you're ordering $5,000 in mail, that's $250 you're saving. Yeah. So whether it's coming from there or that's placed on the letters by the post office when they process it, I'm not entirely sure where that comes from, but either or like I have to figure out where the issue's happening. So I have a ticket in with Open Letter, which these ones are from, to sort of see if they have any insight on it. I've been Googling kind of all afternoon, and there's just kind of like mixed stuff everywhere. And the thing that I really don't like is there's a lot of people that have reported similar problems to other stuff, and the kind of general consensus is like, I don't know, the post office just sucks sometimes. I'm like, well, that's not acceptable when you're spending $20,000 a month on frickin' mail.
Yeah, when it's the lifeblood of your business, right?
Right? Yeah.
I'd be curious to know, like, if they do, I'd be willing to bet they print the barcode on here. If they stop printing that, and like we sent the same batch, if it went out without the barcode, if it would be better or not. Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we got to look at the different kinds that we have. Like the different kinds of mail, and see if there's ones that don't have that we can see if that same problem still exists. Because I mean, it's such a major issue that when I was checking stuff yesterday, I was like 19 for 19 that I spot checked all had the correct address and did not get delivered for some reason.
Out of thousands that you just randomly spot check.
Out of thousands that are in here, right? Like literally thousands that I'm spot checking. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of the challenges of this business is, and I think any sort of marketing business that you're doing any sort of mass marketing is like, these problems will come up, whether it's sending mail and the post office decides to screw you over while you're doing cold calling and the, I just forgot the name of the group that monitors all the cold calling. And
FCC.
FCC, thank you. And they start, throttling your phone numbers and trying to regulate that, whether you do Facebook ads and Facebook changes the algorithm, same with Google, you do anything online. I mean, it's challenging, right? When you're relying on these third parties for your business, and they can just screw you over at any second. Even if it's not, obviously not intentional, but it can be just negligence, right? Because the post office still getting paid. They got their stamps. Mail house still getting paid. They got our credit card money.
Yeah, everybody's getting paid but us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, holy smokes.
Yeah. And not only that, we're flushing it down the toilet right now. So I know it's interesting. And the thing that I guess upsets me the most too is we're still getting like okay results on the stuff that comes in. So I'm like thinking opportunity cost. I'm like, there's probably multi six figures in revenue just in the last couple of batches that have had this problem.
Yeah, we missed because of this.
We're not even having the opportunity to shoot for.
Yeah. Yep.
Like if we're gonna stuff's gonna go sideways, I at least want it to be because we screwed up.
Exactly, because we could fix that, right?
Yeah, exactly. We can learn from it. We blow a big deal. That is what it is. But when it's the incompetence of the post office or the mail house or something that's causing this problem, it's very frustrating.
Yeah. So,
I think the biggest lesson though for everybody on this is make sure you're monitoring your KPIs, your key performance indicators. You're checking, how much is going out, how many people are calling you back. You're actually managing your return to senders, right? Which most people don't do because it is a pain in the ass.
Yep.
But otherwise, these things will happen. Whether that's your cold calls, you're checking, how many dials your callers are making and what their answer rates are. If their answer rates are dropping, check those phone numbers. I bet they're being blocked. Same with like Facebook. If your Facebook conversions or your Google conversions start really dropping, check the algorithm. They might have changed what's going to be favorable for you at that point, or maybe you got to increase your ad spend to keep getting the same value. So, yeah,
that's so important to if that's like the lifeblood of your system in this business, right? Is marketing or lead generation. We always talk about focusing on conversion rates and all that stuff, but if you're not monitoring the lifeblood of your business closely and paying attention and tracking it over a period of time, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's where one of the things that's difficult about this, just business in general, is dealing with these problems is very challenging, and also too, it's freaking boring. It's not exciting. It's not installing flooring and making a house look pretty, or converting sellers or getting contracts signed. This is literally just sitting at your computer, talking on the phone to incompetent people who probably don't. Maybe not even incompetent. They just probably don't know either because they're also just a part of the giant system.
Yep.
And it's just you kind of have to keep digging and then hope that you figure it out.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Staring at a screen, looking at data and numbers, and it's not the funnest part of our job.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's a big part of it, and that's a big part of business. And one of the things too that as being a small business owner, everyone's always wants to preach about income equality and all this sort of stuff. With business owners to employees and all that. But it's for us, especially as small business, I guess you can say that for billionaires, maybe a little bit more. But with us, it's sure, we're going to make, 10 times more than our guys, because when we waste $25,000 on marketing, that doesn't affect them. They're still making the same. I'm sure they get a little bit less opportunity for their commissions, but they didn't. We're the ones that flushed $25,000 down the toilet.
Exactly. And there's nobody that's going to give us our money back, honestly.
No, for sure, right?
Yep.
So, it's super interesting. But, so that's one of my goals for the next few weeks is to try and figure this thing out, because it's going to be a big problem over the next
I hope it doesn't take that long.
I know, me too. I think if I prioritize it, we can usually figure it out okay. But otherwise, I mean, honestly, what we got to do is we just keep going, and we got to keep getting opportunities from where we can.
Yep.
Or pivot and look at some other methods as well, which we're going to be doing anyway, just because. But interesting times.
Yeah, great lesson to learn though.
Yep, exactly. So cool. Well, any good lessons learned? Bought a new duplex last week though, so that's cool. Had a mobile notary come out to Park City, so I went there with all the other entrepreneurs, and I had to excuse myself from a conversation to go buy a duplex, so that made me feel cool.
It's always cool, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm doing deals in Park City. Yeah. Meanwhile, I had to drive to walk down to Washington Street to sign it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I just had to sign the one doc, but so we got that one. We're gonna be figuring it out here. It's kind of a pretty sweet deal. We're not sure if we're gonna keep it or sell it yet though, because it's like a 5-3 with a mother-in-law suite, like a 1-in-1, kind of above the garage. So like it's kind of a duplex, but it's also like perfect for someone that's wants to house hack, which is all the rage right now, which is basically where you buy a property where you live in a portion of it and you rent out the rest so you can live for free. That's what every Get Started in Real Estate podcast tells you should do if you want to get started with rental properties. So it's a high value asset because it's something that a young couple could go live in that apartment and rent out the other side for the 5-3 side for a couple $1,000s a month and live for free pretty easily. Yeah, I mean it's a sexy asset to be in right now, because historically in Spokane, where we're at, that hasn't been a popularized method, and the city ordinances haven't been favorable to that either. You're right. Where this one's located, it's not an issue, but also it's just because of that there hasn't been a ton of ADUs built. I think in the future there's going to be more, and they're changing laws now to make it possible. But just generational, with where people are at, and whether they're retiring or young people, maybe they want a mother-in-law or a family to, parents to live in their little ADU while they take care of them, and they can have this big nice house. I just think where people are at, it makes a ton of sense to market that out to people. But then also it's it makes a ton of sense to keep too. Exactly, right. That is the big for that reason. Yeah. So, but and it needs a little bit of work. The people that have been living there, it's they did some weird DIY stuff. I don't even know what they were thinking with some of it. I mean, I don't know. We went and walked it. They installed 6 different kinds of flooring in the main living area. Just the whole downstairs was obviously finished at some point, but they have the jankiest bathroom down there. It's all going to need to be redone. It's not. Yeah, it's don't even bother. Right. Right. I mean, honestly, if you don't know what you're doing, hire someone to do it. Yeah. Or at least hire someone to come and help you figure out how to do it. Don't just try to do it yourself and pretend it's good, because then what happens? Just get some style if you're gonna do it at least. Don't. I mean, you can't mismatch all these 4 different colors of wood and all this sort of stuff. I know. I don't know. I know. And the funny thing is with these people is they tried to sell it for market rate, and they were unable to, and then they needed to get out of this property because they got a hard money loan, and they legally moved into it, and then B, they desperately need the money to pay off the loan on another property that they own that has an expiring hard money loan. So now they're taking a bath on this thing, and they tried to list it, and if they hadn't done all this crappy DIY work, they probably would have got market rate. But right, they just if they would have just left it. 70 cents on the dollar. Yeah. So, that's another big learning lesson for people is, at least make sure that you have the skill set in some capacity to do stuff. And if you don't know, you can learn from YouTube videos, but just find friends or something that can help you out. Yeah, exactly. Seriously. I mean, that's how I learned, right? And I feel like some of my work is actually turning out well. Yeah, I mean, that's what I learned too. Me and my wife finished a basement in our first house that we kind of, you helped me with the drywall, but a lot of the stuff we just straight DIY'd, and then we hired out the shit that we knew was going to mess it up. The mudding and taping in the drywall, that was the one thing that everyone said, if that looks bad, it looks really bad. Right. So we hired that out, and it turned out great. I've been meaning to tell you, I thought that basement looked like shit. Just kidding. It did not. No, it turned out. No, you guys did a great job on that, and for doing it yourself and saving all the money you did doing it yourself, and on the purchase of the property, to buy it unfinished and to finish yourself is huge. Yeah. So, not everybody can do that. For sure. I mean, it cost us, I think, $8,000 to do all that in that house, and then at the time, I mean, it added. We had a quota $40,000 to do it. For a pro, we did it in 8.5 or whatever, and then we went and cash out refinanced that property the first time, and we pulled out $80-something thousand because it increased the value of the property so much by adding a living area, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom down there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's a great way to increase your capital pretty rapidly.
Dude, we've been finishing basements before we even started business.
I know.
That's been kind of like our token thing, right? Like we just keep doing it.
Yeah, our bread and butter. I mean, it's the easiest way to increase viable properties, add square footage.
Yep. You know? And if you have a basement, instead of doing an addition, which is that's not cheap, right? Just finishing a basement's pretty darn cheap compared to an actual addition of square feet.
Exactly. So. But cool. Anything else from you, Dan?
No, that's it.
That's it. So that's it. All right, guys. Make sure you check your KPIs if you're running a business. If you don't have any KPIs to check, hit us up on our DMs on Instagram. We've been working with a few people here, helping them get their businesses off the ground. We're working on putting together like an actual course and some course material to really structure it out that we'll be, I guess, selling to people here in the next little bit. My goal is by the end of February to have that all sort of like built out and start marketing that. So if you're interested, go to collectingkeyspodcast.com and put in your email. We'll give you a little ebook that gives a brief outline of how to start generating off-market leads, the 5 steps to do so, the exact 5 steps that we took. And then also, as well as you're part of that, you will be alerted as we start to release basically what I'm going to be calling the wholesaler's toolbox, or like the business in a box, which is going to be 100% how to launch your business exactly like we did, including things like sales scripts, mail copy, processes for how we've done everything will all be included in that. So you can keep an eye open for that. Besides that, you can follow us on socials. On Instagram, I'm at Mike_invests. Dan is at InvestorManDan. You can also follow our podcast at Collecting Keys Podcast. And I think that's it. Right on.
That's it. Yeah. See y'all next week.
Cool. See y'all next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.